Today, we're tackling a really tough story. It's the story of Sri Lanka. We're going to try to understand how a country that started with so much promise ended up descending into decades of division and eventually a brutal civil war.
I mean, just listen to this. When Sri Lanka, then known as Ceylon, became independent in 1948, this is what people were saying about it. And you know what? The optimism was totally justified. It had universal voting rights way back in 1931. That's just 3 years after Britain itself. It was doing great on social and economic measures. It really was seen as the model for the post-colonial world.
Which leads to the big question, right? What on earth went wrong? How does a nation with a future that bright end up so completely fractured? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we have to look at the specific decisions that lit the fuse.
Okay, so let's rewind. To really grasp the tragedy that unfolded, you first have to feel the hope that existed back in 1948. You have to see just how incredibly promising everything looked at the very beginning. For the time, this was just remarkable. You had a mature, functioning democracy, a stable political system where power changed hands peacefully, and, crucially, this is the key part, the leaders from the different ethnic groups, the Sinhalese majority and the Tamil minority, they were actually working together. It really looked like they had all the right ingredients for success. But all of that promise, all of that hope, was about to hinge on a single turning point. It all came down to one fateful political decision that would literally change the country's path forever and set it on a course for conflict. And when you look back at the history, everyone points to the same year, 1956. That is the year everything changed. And it all kicked off with an election campaign that would become the catalyst for decades and decades of strife. So here it is, the crucial decision. The original plan was sensible, inclusive. The idea was to replace English, the colonial language, with both Sinhala and Tamil as official national languages. But a politician named S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike saw a shortcut to power. He ditched the inclusive plan and instead made a Sinhala-only policy, his rallying cry. He weaponized language to appeal to the Sinhalese majority and win an election. And this ignited a really dangerous political game. It's called ethnic outbidding. Once Bandaranaike made his move, the other major party felt like it had to do the same thing to avoid losing votes. All of a sudden, both parties were in a toxic competition to prove who was more pro-Sinhalese, pushing the Tamil minority further and further into a corner. The fallout was immediate, and it was devastating. The Sinhala-only bill became law. The Tamil community naturally responded with peaceful protests. The government's response? It wasn't dialogue, it was violence. And for the first time ever, horrific anti-Tamil riots swept across the island. A terrible new line had been crossed.
You have to understand, 1956 wasn't just a one-off tragedy. It was more like lighting a very, very long fuse. It started this slow-motion disaster that would just keep spiraling out of control for the next 30 years.
And the escalation just kept going. In 1972, a new constitution gave Buddhism foremost status, which effectively told other religions they were second class. By 1976, even moderate Tamil parties felt like they had no other option but to demand a separate country. This cycle of radicalization on both sides just got worse and worse until it all exploded in 1983, with a horrific anti-Tamil pogrom that finally plunged the nation into a full-blown 25-year civil war. And this wasn't just politics. The discrimination became baked into the system. Just imagine this for a second. Imagine being told that you need to get higher exam scores to get into university than the person sitting next to you simply because of your ethnicity. Or imagine being shut out of a career in government service. This was the new reality for Tamils in the 1970s. So while all these ethnic tensions were boiling over, the democratic system itself started to corrode. The state began to change the rules of the game. Not to be more fair, but to grab more power and crush anyone who got in their way. Get a load of this number. It's just staggering. Because of the way the electoral system worked, the winning party in 1977 got about half the popular vote, but they walked away with 140 seats in parliament. That's a 5/6 supermajority. Their main rival? They got almost 30% of the vote and ended up with just 8 seats. This wasn't just a win. It was the kind of lopsided power that lets a government do whatever it wants.
And that's exactly what they did. The new president, J.R. Jayawardene, used that massive majority to rewrite the Constitution itself. He created a brand new executive presidency with immense centralized power, effectively dismantling the checks and balances of the entire parliamentary system.
And in case there was any doubt about just how much power he now had, Jaywardeni himself bragged about it with this infamous quote. He was saying right out in the open that his authority was pretty much absolute. I mean, just think about that. That's how far the democratic ideal of 1948 had fallen.
So what was the final cost of all these decisions? What did this all lead to? Well, the legacy is one of profound decay, both in human lives and in the country's most important institutions. Let's look at the real-world impact. Decades of these ethnocentric policies created this stark reality. While the Sinhalese make up about 75% of the population, they eventually came to hold over 95% of all government jobs. The public service, which was once a key path for Tamils to advance, was almost completely closed off to them.
And the human cost? It's just unimaginable. Over 70,000 people killed in the Civil War, hundreds of thousands forced from their homes but still trapped inside the country, and a diaspora of up to 1 million Tamils who fled the island entirely. On top of it all, a culture of violence became normal, and a deadly connection formed between politicians, security forces, and criminals.
And so, here we are, full circle. The country that was once seen as having the best chance had, by almost any measure you can think of, gone backwards. The promise of a multi-ethnic liberal democracy was shattered by decades of divisive politics and the hunger for absolute power. This leaves us with a really profound question. You see, the story of Sri Lanka isn't just about ethnic conflict. It's about what happens when political leaders, in their search for power, break the very rules and norms that are supposed to hold a diverse society together. And that's a lesson, a warning, really, with implications that go far beyond just one island nation.